Hello and welcome to our Stand for Something community conversation. My name is Margaret Edwartowski. I'm the Executive Director for Y Arts for the YMCA of Metropolitan Detroit. And this is our third, we're very excited to present our third community conversation as part of the initiatives from the DIG committee through the YMCA of Metropolitan Detroit. That's Diversity, Inclusion, Equity, and Global. And in honor of Welcome Week, we are talking about immigration, and we have an amazing panel with us today. But before I get to introducing our great guests, I would like to bring on our CEO. Please welcome Helene Weir. Hi, Helene.
Hey, Margaret, and thank you. And thanks everyone for joining us today for this very important conversation. I want to welcome you on behalf of the YMCA of Metropolitan Detroit board and staff. And we're really excited to have such great expertise with our guests on the panel today that you'll learn more about in a moment. And of course, we have Margaret, our fabulous host, who is Executive Director of our Y Arts branch and who always does a wonderful job for us. It's great that the YMCA is part of Welcoming Week, an initiative that we do in the YMCA, but also it's very timely in all of the conversations around immigration and about how we welcome people to our communities. And I think the YMCA is an organization that's active in 120 countries around the world. We are open to all, and we want to be part of the community. And we want people to know that despite the fact we have a bit of a historic name, we are open to all, and we're here for everybody. And we really want to make sure that people see that we are part of the community and they can be part of our Y. So thanks again to our guests, and have a great conversation.
Thank you so much, Helene. And one of the great things that Helene has brought to the Detroit Y in coming here is helping us to embrace that global portion of being part of the Y. And it's a very exciting thing to have to embrace people involved with the YMCA globally. So I'm very thankful for her in spearheading efforts toward that. For those of you joining us, do please feel free to give us comments on your thoughts of what's going on. This is a community conversation, so if you're tuned into YouTube now, make sure to put some comments in there. Our director of our DIG initiative, Ariel, will be manning the chat there and will answer you, and she'll also provide links as we speak about them in the presentation. Also, we are open to your questions. So if there's something that we haven't covered, please type it in the chat, and we will be glad to try to get it in front of our panel. So speaking of our panel, let me introduce them so we can get to this great conversation. First up, I would like to introduce you to Karen Phillippe. Karen is the Director of New American Integration with the Office of Global Michigan. She has been working in the field of immigration law and immigrant refugee integration for 29 years. Karen has served as the Immigration and State Department Specialist for U.S. Senator Don Regal and worked in various law firms for 20 years developing and managing employment-based immigration practices. Before joining the state of Michigan, she's very active in promoting the cultural and economic benefits that immigrants and refugees have on communities and making Michigan a more immigrant-friendly state. Thank you so much for being with us today, Karen.
Thanks so much for having me. I look forward to discussion.
It's great having you. And then next up, we have Christine Sobay. Christine leads community engagement and communication efforts for the Michigan Immigrant Rights Center, working to support immigrant communities across Michigan. In 2013, she was one of 10 national leaders honored by the White House as a champion of change for her efforts to advance immigrant inclusion. Christine served as a Peace Corps volunteer in Mauritania and Senegal, and is a member of the National Association of Social Workers. She's a graduate of the New Detroit Multicultural Leadership Program, Detroit Equity Action Lab, Welcoming Communities Transatlantic Exchange, and Detroit Revitalization Fellows. She received her MSW and undergraduate degrees from the University of Michigan. Please warmly welcome Christine Sobay.
Thanks for having me. Looking forward to just talking with you all.
It's great to have you. I say warmly welcome, and I'm like waiting for this, so I'll do this for all of you. Next is Emma Davis. Emma is a program manager at Global Detroit. She engages community members and stakeholders in initiatives focused on home ownership, financial stability, and civic engagement. She also coordinates the statewide Welcoming Michigan program, working to build mutual respect among all who call Michigan home. Hello, Emma. Welcome. Warmly welcome, Emma. Yay. Oh, you're on mute.
I am. Thank you.
Classic.
Very much looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you for joining us. Last but not least, we have Wojciech Zolnowski. He immigrated to the United States in 1996 from Poland, and he has been the executive director of International Institute of Metropolitan Detroit since 2005. He became a naturalized citizen in 2014 and received his MBA in 2001 from University of Detroit Mercy. He has 20 years of experience providing organizational management, program development, evaluation, and finance. Welcome, Wojciech. Let's warmly welcome Wojciech.
Thank you. Glad to be here and feel like a blessed among women.
I know. It's wonderful to have you. Thank you for joining us. So let's get right to it. And admittedly, this is one of the first conversations of this where I feel like I am really representing the audience here because I don't know much in this arena. It's a topic that comes up a lot in the news, and I think I understand it, but I'm really looking forward to your insights to understand better. And that's why we do these conversations, to help the community have a better understanding of the topic. So let's start right out of the gate, and anyone can start this topic off. What is the difference between a refugee, an immigrant, and an undocumented immigrant?
I'd love to start us off with this question because we get this one a lot.
Okay.
So undocumented folks, refugees, dreamers, asylees, all of these people are immigrants, but each person has a different immigration status. And so I recommend thinking about immigration status as a spectrum with different levels of rights and privileges and benefits along the spectrum. So at one end, you have US citizens, and thanks to the 14th Amendment passed after the Civil War, all persons born in the US are citizens, and immigrants can also naturalize to become citizens. Then you have permanent residents or green card holders, and these are folks who obtain a visa to come to the US through work, through family, or through humanitarian reasons. And then there's also conditional permanent residents. Then there are asylees and refugees, and these are folks who have a well-founded fear of persecution based on their race, religion, nationality, political opinion, or membership in a social group. Then moving along the spectrum, again, you have non-immigrants, and so that includes students, tourists, diplomats, people who aren't going to be here permanently. Also at this level on the spectrum, you have people who have deferred action, and this includes folks like dreamers or Daca recipients. And then at the far end of the spectrum, you have many of our community members, including folks who've been here 30 years or more, who have no status. And so these folks are known as undocumented. And some of these folks have, came in documented, but then overstayed a visa. So that's kind of helps set the stage, again, on that spectrum. I hope that helps answer it a little bit.
Most definitely. Does anyone have anything else they'd like to add in those?
Yeah, if I could, for me, which is, Christine, very great job in terms of, the technical descriptions and then so forth. I think that helps the, pretty much, for anybody in a daily conversation, sitting in Starbucks and listening to us talking about immigrants in a spectrum of this conversation. It's basically, refugees are immigrants, but not every immigrant based on a status and a pathway is classified as a refugee. Refugee, it's a special United Nations program, and you know, through the ORR, Office of Refugee Resettlement, they are classified basically, you know, as you know, in a torn war countries, ethnic cleansing, prosecution. So there's a special program given that there's a massive movement, and they go through you know, camps, refugee camps, and then different, through United Nations, different agreements, different countries, they have a goal or, you know, allocation. I believe the goal for the United States, current administration, 125,000 of refugee welcome in a year or so. Sometimes it happens, sometimes it all happens. But the, you know, ultimate goal is, you know, like Margaret, you mentioned I came as an immigrant. Well, I came as a student. I never had the intent to stay, to permanently move and become a citizen. But, you know, life, I came for education. I came, you know, then I met my wife, and my life was over. So I had to decided to stay. But you know, in a simple fact that you know, all people, asylum seeker, refugees, that are immigrants, but not every immigrant, and Christine Gregory job is a refugee or asylum seeker. It's always predicated upon those technical classification. Is typically, you know, by, you know, administration or by the federal government, and but also has a further ties to the United Nations and or our Office of Refugee Resettlements and so forth.
Thank you for adding that. It has to be difficult with so many classifications for people to understand the difference, right? Does anyone else want to add?
Yeah, for sure. And just one final piece, you know, along that spectrum that Christine had mentioned, really, you've got folks who are maybe here temporarily under maybe one of those non-immigrant categories that Christine mentioned, or folks that are here more permanently or as an immigrant. And that's why the distinction between a non-immigrant and an immigrant is a non-immigrant is typically here on a temporary basis, and immigrant is typically here on a more permanent type basis. And then to Wojciech's point, there's different categories within both.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Karen. So Christine mentioned Daca, and this is something obviously we've seen in the headlines, and you know, I think I get it, but tell me more. What is the Daca program, and how does it protect people?
So I can get us started on that one again. So Daca stands for Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. It's a federal policy that protects, I think around, I want to say 800,000 young people, commonly known as Dreamers, because there was a DREAM Act introduced that would help offer protections for this group. It has not passed, however. And so this is for young people who entered the United States as children and entered without a visa. So the program does not grant them official legal status or a pathway to citizenship, but it does allow them to apply for a driver's license, social security number, and a work permit, and it provides temporary protection from deportation. And all of those things are very important and huge for not just the Daca recipients themselves, but their families. And so it's made a big difference in our communities. I think we're hoping that, you know, the next step will go further to offer permanent protection for this group of community members. And so that's what we're hoping for, you know, to happen next through Congress. And so there's several proposals that would do that. And if folks want to learn more, we can share where they can find that information at the end. But I hope that gets us started.
Yeah, that would be great.
And just to add it, and you know, I think what is, and for many of us that work with the Daca recipients, and you know, and again, we were able to, because of our Congress, the legislative body, were, you know, enacted specific programs for them. What folks should know that you know, what is so unique about the Daca recipients, that many of them, at least you know, I can say from the, you know, from my colleagues at the institute sharing that, you know, that they came as a young children. So many of them, they are not even bilingual. Like you can hear me speaking with the accent and so forth, but many of them, they came as a 2-year-old, 1-year-old, and 7-year-old, attended all of our schools, and many of them didn't know that they have a foreign status and so forth. And then, there was a time frame that they try to enter into colleges. Christine mentioned driver license. You know what, you don't have a status. So that's why, prompted, many advocates and community members to, we were able to push through the legislative to establish DACA. But the key is they don't have a status. They have to renew it regularly. So they paying fees, they paying taxes once they get a work permit. So they are valued members of a community. And that's why that's, unfortunate that they cannot fully benefit yet, and most of us do not advocate it to become a citizen right away, go at the back end of the line, but have them at least some sort of glance of hope that there is something for them to look forward and be greater contributors in our community, which they already are. But I think the motivation, the dream of being fully integrated welcome is not there yet.
So you're saying you could come here as a very young child, live your whole life, and then, try to apply for something and suddenly.
Well, I don't want to open like a
difficulty.
Pandora box, because they're going to put us in
Sure.
Because you can come, but there's and that's why, how is it, DACA defer actions or child arrival, because typically they came different pathway than the traditional immigration,
Right.
what we call it, the legal immigration, and so forth. But they wasn't their choice. So that's what we try to build a case that, it's not like they broke the law. They didn't have a choice, the law on the books, but they didn't have a choice. They grew up here, and they speak English, and some of them work great jobs and so forth. And I think we're going to talk about the socioeconomics a little bit later. But I think that what we try to build a case and reason for our legislative body to step onto the plate is like, look, certain things, you can't discriminate based on a race because you didn't have a choice. You can't discriminate because the choices weren't made for them. So why we try to punish them and so forth. So that's the main argument why we should, and there were some proposals. I mean, there's so much data that you can go back and forth, but I think, it's just the whole thing that they are extremely important to our ecosystem, social, cultural, economic, but they don't have yet the pathway that would give them some sort of the glimpse of hope. The green door is not green yet.
I just want to chime in too. I completely agree with Wojciech. They're essential parts of our communities. They're active in community life. They're very involved in civic and social activities and contribute to the economy. So that's all extremely true. I just want to kind of comment on their parents as well. So, many of their parents, the same could be said of them. They might not have status, or for example, maybe they came, but then overstayed a visa. There's lots of different reasons folks end up without status. But I just want to kind of add context, for the case of the parents. So in some cases, those parents felt like they didn't have a choice when choosing to migrate. And people migrate for so many different reasons, but essentially what it boils down to is, families are looking for a better life for themselves and for their children. And so, many of those families made a very difficult journey to get here, to make that happen, and, experience lots of difficulties in their home country and along the way. So just want to, give some context for what life is like for the parents of those DACA recipients, because there's also been proposals to help change the situation for their parents as well.
Thank you for adding that. I am very excited to say that we have question, a follow-up question on this topic from our YouTube comments. And it might be going on a limb, but I think this is our first audience question in our panel discussion. So you guys are setting records already today. So the question from the chat was, what is the requirement to be part of DACA? How does one get that status?
And Wojciech, help me if you can remember all the details as well. But so you had to have entered the US prior to age 16, lived in the US continuously. You had to be under the age of 31 at the time of the creation of the program. So that was 2012. Let's see, you can't have committed a felony or a certain number of misdemeanors. So you can't have committed crimes. I'm missing some things. You have to have completed high school or a GED program, or you could have served in the armed services. Wojciech, am I missing something? I believe you also can't be a national security threat, so they they look at that as well.
And yeah, just to add it, yes, that was the biggest challenge because of a school recording. There was sometimes with the schools we're going back and forth to see if they can validate that the high school completion or at least or the GED or equivalent and so forth. The only thing is if I could be wrong because I don't, so please understand, I don't do DACAs and so forth, but I thought the age was 35. I could be, if somebody could Google quickly.
31. Yeah, it's 31.
Okay, so Christina was right. All right, so 35 is thinking of something else. I wish I would be 35, but maybe that's what it is. So but the rest of it, it's right to the point. But and I think that the next thing is to apply. I think now it's the renewal. And we try to advise the clients. I think at least do it 3 months before the expiration because it takes a while and so forth. And again, just please be advised, it's just a protective status. And in the last couple of years, there were so many changes to the DACA. Thank goodness we are still in the same phase, but that's something eventually needs to be done, and so forth. But we want to assure the DACA recipients that there is a community organization efforts. You have 4 faces here for organization that you can always find assistance.
And Karen has been sharing some great links, and I think Ariel is sharing those into the YouTube comments. So there's definitely more information about DACA there. Let's go to the next because we've got a lot of ground to cover today, and time is flying because you guys are so interesting. So how do let's learn about each of your organizations and how you support and protect immigrants and refugees. And I will throw this one to Emma because we want to hear from you. So why don't you start us off, Emma, and tell us about your organization?
Sure. So before I jump into that, I'd actually like to highlight something that I think the previous 2 comments or questions have triggered for me, and that is, we've seen a diversity of statuses that immigrants come to the US with, but that's not the only facet of diversity that we see within our immigrant communities. And so even within, the city of Detroit, we see great diversity in terms of the pathways through which people come to the US, the backgrounds that they have, the countries from which they come, their experiences once they're here. So I want to emphasize that the immigrant experience and immigrants themselves are not monolithic. With that being said, Global Detroit is an economic and community development organization that advances strategies for revitalization and shared prosperity in Detroit and across the Southeast Michigan region through immigrant inclusion. And that work takes quite a few shapes. We do work within talent with international student retention, with entrepreneurship. We do some small business support. I personally do work within community development, focused on housing, financial stability, civic engagement. So we have our hands in quite a few pies, not so much on the technical side of immigration, but on building immigrant inclusion into various sectors within our day-to-day lives. And our place-based work is focused mostly in Hamtramck, Bonglatown, East Davison Village, but we serve all communities in the region. And with our statewide Welcoming Michigan program, those communities have expanded as well. And I want to shout out Christine Sobay here, because before Welcoming Michigan came to Global Detroit, it was at the Michigan Immigrant Rights Center, and Christine Sobay was the director of that program for a long time, and really oversaw the success widespread across the state, built incredible partnerships and relationships with all the communities, not just the 22 welcoming communities across Michigan, which is, I think, a larger number than any other state has. Very exciting.
So
Thanks,
I'll jump
Emma.
next.
Yeah, go ahead. I was just going to send you, Karen.
Yeah, I just hopefully this can get out to the folks on YouTube as well. I just dropped Global Detroit's recent study on building inclusive cities, which is really interesting and actually a groundbreaking type report about inclusive neighborhoods in particular in the Detroit area. So as I mentioned, our office, we're with the state of Michigan. We're a state level office that supports immigrant and refugee integration. And actually the state's Office of Refugee Services sits in our office, as does our 3 state ethnic commissions. So we have within the state a Hispanic Latino Commission, a Commission on Middle Eastern American Affairs, and an Asian Pacific American Affairs Commission. And then we also have a program called the MITS program, or the Michigan International Talent Solutions Program, which really looks at striving for equitable access to services for state level services and programming for immigrants and refugees. And so we do a lot more with the state on a policy level. We don't do as much of the direct service piece, but some of the things that I'll highlight that our office has done in terms of supporting immigrants and refugees in terms of their integration into our state are we've partnered with our Department of Licensing and Regulatory Affairs to develop over 40 skilled immigrant occupational licensing guides. And so what that does is for individuals who are foreign educated and foreign trained, it explains kind of step by step how they become licensed in our state to be an accountant, an engineer, a cosmetologist, a barber, etc. Because our licensing processes, when you look them up, even for myself as being a native English speaker and born in the United States, it can be hard to read and understand. And so this helps them figure out if they need to have any kind of credential evaluation or test of English language, etc. And it doesn't change the state's licensing process. I want to be clear on that. It just provides a step-by-step guide of how they become licensed if they're foreign educated and foreign trained. We've also done some work with our Michigan State Police and developed a curriculum around personal safety and driving laws in Michigan, and our Michigan State Police partner with our refugee resettlement agencies to deliver that training to help them understand a lot of, in particular, folks that are coming as refugees to the United States. Again, a certain section of those who are here in Michigan may be coming from countries where they don't trust law enforcement. And so we're trying to help them start build relationships and also help our new arrivals understand that there are times where you can call the police, you should be calling the police, for your own personal safety, for the safety of others, etc. Really trying to build some of those relationships. We also have worked, this was, at the beginning of our office, we partnered with the Michigan Department of Transportation to get the signage around the Ambassador Bridge changed. For those of you in the Detroit area, you know that if you get off on the exit, you go right onto the bridge, and it really never said that. And so we worked with MDOT to have that signage changed, to have the Canadian flag put on it, have some of the wording changed. Again, so we partner with a lot of different agencies in different ways in order to try and assist our immigrant and refugee communities and with their integration into Michigan.
Thank you. And I have almost accidentally gone to Canada, sign notwithstanding. So I appreciate the work.
Many of us have.
Amongst all the other wonderful things that you listed off that you did. Christine, why don't you go next?
Yeah, I'll use that as a segue because we've actually served many folks who accidentally ended up at the border and unfortunately ended up in detention or deportation proceedings. So that was a very important effort from the community in collaboration with the state. Yeah, so Merck is the Michigan Immigrant Rights Center. We are a statewide legal resource center for immigrants across Michigan. We have offices in several cities across the state, and we strive to make Michigan a place where immigrant communities experience equity and belonging. So as we've kind of touched on already, so many of our systems really, are in much need of reform, and that includes immigration, the immigration legal system, labor, and child advocacy. And we work to pursue justice at the intersection of those systems, and really believe that there are solutions out there that could work for not just immigrant community members, but for all of us. And so our work falls into a couple of buckets. We provide legal services, we do advocacy, and then we have community engagement and education. And so we provide legal services for free for low-income immigrants, and this can really be a lifeline for families who are looking to reunite or to stay together or secure safety. We serve all the children who come to Michigan by themselves, so without family or if they've been separated from their families. We also pursue cases and file lawsuits to protect immigrant rights. And so that could be, the right for children to attend school, the right of an immigrant to access certain benefits or services that they're eligible for, or the rights of immigrant workers or farm workers to make sure that they're treated fairly by their employers. And then we also fight alongside immigrant communities in advocating for what they want and what they need. And so, for example, we're part of many coalitions working to achieve, for example, reinstating access to driver's licenses. So we're part of the Drive Michigan Forward coalition. And we work with all these wonderful partners on the call and a host of many more across the state. So that's the short story.
You're very busy and doing a lot and supporting a lot of people. So thank you for everything that you're doing. Wojciech, tell us about what your organization does.
Sure, I'm gladly to. So again, Wojciech Zolnowski, I have this privilege to represent the International Institute of Metropolitan Detroit, which is the oldest immigrant organization in the state of Michigan. We're already 102 years old, and try to make necessary strategic adjustments to be value added to today's community needs and so forth. What is so unique about International Institute that we do provide direct services, either direct to the clients and or direct to emerging organization that need our assistance in a key core programs and so forth. And the second part of International Institute, our mission and strategy, that we serve both. We believe, our philosophical belief is that the best way to integrate foreign-born and residents, if they work, study, play together. So majority of our programs, with the exception perhaps of ESL and immigration legal, we welcome all immigrants and non-immigrants and so forth. So speaking of the programs, the core programs are the immigration legal, adult education and workforce development, Center for Working Families with the focus is on a career and a job placement, income support, financial coaching, and we added recently a business entrepreneurship program. Institute is the first organization in the state of Michigan that hosted and implemented, deployed Kaufman Foundation Fast Track. We just completed 12 participants enroll, 8 successfully completed on a way to start their businesses. What is so unique today, and we try to addressing the needs of a community at large, that we started integrated CNA program for both immigrants and non-immigrants. And I think the significance is because probably you heard it a couple of days ago, Henry Ford closed 220 beds because lack of nursing and so forth. So we try to add value-added programs, alternative pathway for immigrants, not immigrants, to become employed, self-sufficient, and that's our ultimate goal. But I posted our website and Facebook. All of the relevant programs are listed and currently updated and so forth. So please, for the folks who are listening to us, please take advantage of it. We still have some openings for some of our programs and so forth. And but particularly what I wanted today address, because like many of you know it, Welcome Week is, or the pivotal function of a Welcome is the emphasis on the citizenship. So I wanted to somehow make them aware that International Institute, along with other partners, we push the LPRs, the legal permanent residents, commonly known as the green card holders, to make the decision to become a citizens. And that's very important to us, because based on the most recent data, we had over 120,000, let me repeat it, 120,000 a green card holder who, for those who are listening to us, probably they are your neighbors, who have the green card for 10, 15. Some of them, we see it with 20 years of a green card holders. I was one of them, by the way. Procrastinators who cannot make this decision. Why is it important? Because, if you're not citizen, you cannot vote. You cannot fully participate in a civic life. You cannot make the changes and then so forth. So there's critical for us in the state of Michigan, for people who listens, to figure out how we can convince. I mean, we talk about various statuses and so forth. I mean, my goodness, people will do all is necessary to get the green card. They will borrow money. They will sell their belongings. I don't want to joke because I don't know the audience, but so they will do all is necessary to get the green card. Once we get there, then they wait to become a citizen. Isn't the ultimate goal, or should be ultimate goal, we're talking about those different segments, to become a U.S. citizen. So we have a cohort, and we have to be honest with it. Why they waiting? Yes, the cost could be issue $725, but there is a way for many of them they could get fee waivers and so forth. So here I'm appealing, as we talk about this Welcome Week, folks, for those who listen who are green card holders, for people who are citizens, neighbors, knock on your neighbors, don't ask them, hey, are you a green card holder? Because, there's a great opportunity. Why are you waiting for? Become a U.S. citizen. You can find, going through all 4 of us here, you can find access to place that will provide you a quality of legal assistance to become a citizen. So please don't wait. The time is now. Because you can do more, and sense of security, sense of belonging, sense of welcoming is not, the journey has not been completed. Do it now.
What a great point you make, Wojciech.
Amen. I forgot to say amen.
Okay. Amen. And this is exactly what you've said, and how impassioned it is exactly why we have these conversations, because there may be someone listening, and we're appealing not only to members of the Y, but members of the community to have a better understanding, and also to help people to get involved and to get involved in an informed way. So now that you've said this, someone somewhere may have a neighbor that they want to have this conversation with. Now, we're not going to encourage people to go knocking on doors around their, neighborhood to say, do you have a green card? But, if you have a friend that you can support, or a family member, or someone on your block, now hopefully we've put some of that information out there. So thank you for making that.
And just to add it, and I will share, I don't have it on me right now, but we already on our Facebook, there is a link, there's a virtual citizenship info session this coming Thursday as part of our, so welcoming week for us, for many of us here, is not just, this type of event and so forth. It's a cohort of events. So this coming Thursday at 6 p.m., you will have a live abilities to hear about what's why and why not, and how can we help.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing that. And, thinking about this panel, it makes this, hopefully our audience understands the reach that all of you have collectively, because obviously you're doing everything from a policy and program level to direct one-on-one service. And it's just really amazing the breadth of what you all are working to achieve. So next question, and I really love sort of the point of view of this is, what do you think, why do you think that immigration is overlooked as a strength in our country? Emma, do you want to lead us off on that? I know I threw to you first last time, but do you have any thoughts on that one?
Sure. I think generally put, it's underestimated as a strength simply because of a lack of understanding. And so I think events like this, other Welcoming Week events, the work of my colleagues on this panel, other members of the Detroit Immigration Task Force, and Welcoming Michigan partners, work to educate the general population about immigration, about the experiences of immigrants. And before we kind of dive into what exactly the strengths are that immigrants bring to the country, I also want to underpin that with the truth that immigrants are human beings, right? And anyone here within the US deserves to feel a sense of belonging, deserves to be treated with dignity and respect. And so, Global Detroit does make an economic case for why immigrants should be welcomed here in the region in Michigan. But I really want to underline that immigrants should not be reduced to their economic input. And unfortunately, that's a narrative that it resonates with a bipartisan audience. So it's one inroad and one argument for immigrant inclusion. But Karen mentioned before our Building Inclusive Cities report, which was the first of its kind research into the impact of immigrants at the neighborhood level. And so beyond the addition to population numbers, beyond economic contributions to neighborhood communities, immigration improves several quality of life factors. So in interviews and focus groups with residents of all types within the communities that we focused on, American-born, immigrant, every ethnicity, we saw an increase in the pride for their neighborhoods, increase in a feeling of safety, increase in a feeling of belonging. So you see those kind of benefits as well. And we talk a lot about the diversity that immigrants bring to the US. That's always true. And I think a lot of times we also kind of fall back on this notion that America was built by immigrants, and I don't want to undercount the contributions that immigrants have made, but I also want to avoid kind of this well-intentioned pitfall of erasing the fact that this country was built on stolen land and by enslaved Africans. So I think within these conversations of welcoming and belonging, we're not just talking about immigrants, we're talking about everybody within Detroit, within Southeast Michigan, within Michigan and the US at large.
And thank you for always sort of bringing that humanity and understanding to this discussion. I think the last couple of times, it's just this great reminder of, you know, when we talk about a group of people, we're talking about a group of individual employees with their own needs, beliefs, you know, passions. So thank you for keeping us honest there. Who wants to add on to why we don't value the strength of this?
Well, I just wanted to chime in and uplift and build on some of what Emma had said. I completely agree. And, you know, no matter who you are or where you come from, you know, whether you came through forced migration as an enslaved African hundreds of years ago, and that was your family's migration path, or whether you came recently, you know, including the Afghan arrivals that are coming now, everyone deserves to be treated with respect and be treated fairly in this country. And so, unfortunately, I think that fear and racism can blind us to that fact. And also, unfortunately, there are policymakers and corporations that often use immigration as a tool to separate us. But we know, and especially, you know, to Emma's point, through conversations we have through the Detroit Immigration Task Force and, you know, conversations with our neighbors, we collectively know that diversity is a strength and that we should embrace this. It helps us solve problems. You know, our neighbors, we rely on each other. We work together. You know, we have a history of coming together, you know, to achieve progress. You know, we have many examples of doing this successfully, you know, from the civil rights movement and other times. So we can keep doing that. We can do it again to solve problems and work together. So in that sense, immigrants are community members, you know, just like, you know, anyone else. And so that helps. That's a strength for our country.
Fantastic, thank you. Hopefully, I think my mic is kind of going in and out, so I hope you can hear me all right. Sadly, I wanted to keep chiming in on this, but we are nearing, not at the end of our time together, but nearing it, and there are a couple of other things we wanted to cover before the end of today. Christine introduced the topic, and we wanted to touch on it before we wrap in shortly with the Afghan arrivals and what's going on with, you know, people coming here from that region. So open to the panel, tell us what that situation is like right now, what's going on, and then we'll get into maybe some ways that we can support out of that. So would anyone like to start off?
Sure, I'm happy to start with that. So our office is one of the lead points on this effort in terms of the state and coordinating and planning for the arrival of Afghan nationals. We anticipate receiving about 1,300 Afghan arrivals in the coming months. And they will be working through our state's refugee resettlement agencies in order to be placed within Michigan. We are working with a whole host of partners around this effort, including everyone on the screen, all of our fellow panelists and many others around the state. We don't have a lot of details yet, but part of that's because a lot of them are still being processed through the U.S. military bases, et cetera, before arriving here in Michigan and around the country. There will be a lot of great needs, and some of those are still being identified around clothing and housing, childcare assistance, et cetera. There's a lot of different areas of need, and I did put this in the chat earlier, but we'll drop it in again. Our office is helping the resettlement agencies coordinate those offers to help. And our email box is newamericans with an S at michigan.gov. So it's a .gov. Again, newamericans with an S at michigan.gov .gov. We're helping to coordinate the resettlement agencies with offers to help. We know there's a lot of efforts going on both locally and nationally to support the Afghan arrivals, and that's really greatly appreciated. And I know the needs will continue. And as we have more information, we're definitely going to be disseminating that out through communities.
Thanks, Karen. Christina, did you have something to add to that?
Yeah, so, Margaret, you commented on, the work that the folks on this event are doing. And to Karen's point, there's actually a much larger network of folks who aren't here, but we work with a lot. So, we're very pleased with the broad network we've built of service providers and immigration legal service providers specifically. However, it's going to be a major lift to help all the Afghan arrivals. We've worked hard to develop that network across the state, but especially for the immigration legal services required to help Afghan arrivals apply for asylum once they arrive. That process is going to take some time. And, unfortunately, our network is very under-resourced. Particularly for the volume of these kind of cases. It takes a couple of years to process and a lot of paperwork, a lot of filing. So we, for the service providers who will be doing that, including Merck and others, where we welcome and encourage donations and support to help accomplish that. Because without a successful asylum application, these folks will be severely limited in their participation in community life. So we want to do everything we can to help make sure that their process here is successful. So I can share more information in the chat on that.
Yeah, that would be great.
And just to add, and Margaret, just a
yeah.
So, because it's a nice segue, because as a fact, I know Institute Legal team, they're already making effort to put a list of legal resources, and the main reason, and folks, we need to typically when a typical refugee comes, they already vetted, they come with the green cards in many cases. And so forth, because of the expedited process, probably they will arrive, and then for some of them, because it's a special visas, and asylum seekers and so forth. So therefore, the legal work will begin for many of them when they arrive. So even though vetted, nevertheless, they won't have it yet. So therefore, there is a collective collective effort to make sure that we are ready for the 1,300, Karen, or 1,500 that Michigan is expecting in the near future.
Yeah, and I want to just jump in and highlight that a lot of the Afghan arrivals will not be eligible for ORR funded services through the refugee resettlement agencies past the 90-day mark. Most refugee and other ORR populations are eligible for some services up to 5 years once they arrive. So 90 days, that's only 3 months. And so it, the urgency of finding resources, support is much greater. And so we're hoping through our work with the Southeast Michigan Regional Refugee Resettlement Collaborative to build up a network and an environment of support that exists, informed by the refugee resettlement agencies and their expertise in serving these populations, but really with organizations, social service organizations, local governments, other organizations that are not traditionally involved with serving refugees, stepping up. And individuals can support too, either by volunteering or by donating at the moment to the refugee resettlement agencies, but we hope to have more news on a more collaborative platform through which members of the collaborative can access volunteers and donations.
Thank you. Along these lines, one of the things before we say our farewells is that I wanted to highlight is that the YMCA has partnered with Samaritas to collect resources for Afghan arrivals. So if you are watching and you're a YMCA member or a member of the community, we are looking to new items only, but for hygiene products, linens of all sizes, cleaning supplies, and things like that. contact your local YMCA in Metropolitan Detroit. There's flyers and more information. They'll be glad to tell you we're doing this through September 30th. And you'll be able to take the items right to the Y, and they will get to the people who need them. What an amazing discussion. And I'm just so impressed by all of you and thankful for you to take time out of your busy schedules to share this really important information with us. Does anybody have, I always like to give 1 second to, because we have like 1 minute left, to highlight any other organizations we haven't mentioned here that you think deserve some shout out or signal boost, or any, anyone you think we've left out in this discussion.
I personally, I think there's too many organizations.
That's right. I was thinking that too.
That's just my own personal thought. But I think one other piece that I will lift up just to keep in mind in terms of the Afghan arrivals, the other big thing we're thinking about and planning for is the fact that a lot of these folks will have experienced very recent trauma. And so really trying to keep that front of mind as we are welcoming them and as they are trying to get access to services, that they've gone through some very recent traumatic events, which many of us have been able to witness over the news, and obviously some not, but just keeping that at forefront of mind is something that we are trying to remind folks of.
Well, we are, because we have such important people, they have places to be. So we are going to wrap up. And I, again, am just amazingly thankful to all of you for your time and great information. Thanks, Emma, Christine, Wojciech, Karen. A great discussion. And we hope you have a wonderful welcome week.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Yeah, and
Thanks.
thanks for everything the Y is doing. It was great to see the setup in the Y and the challenge documents. So I hope everyone takes advantage of those and participates in their local Y.
Absolutely. For Stand for Something, I'm Margaret Obrotowski, representing the DIG committee and the YMCA Metropolitan Detroit. Thank you so much for joining us today. And make sure to, you can always reach out to us at the Y for more follow-up if you have more questions. Thanks. Have a great rest of your day.